Welcome back, Pete. Good to see you back in the studio. You recovering well from Showcase?
Yeah, Dan, what a great showcase it was. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty excited about this podcast that we're releasing today.
Absolutely. So, first and foremost, thanks to all our sponsors, particularly our Showcase sponsors, right? The most sponsorship we've ever seen and greatest turnout we've seen a Showcase as well, correct?
Yeah, no question. We had 22 sponsors and over 160 people attending the show. So it was a great show, very well supported. And, we had 33 different sessions, educational sessions, Dan, and we had over 50 speakers. I mean, this is truly an industry event, not just an alliance deal. We just organized it. This was produced by the industry.
Comment. I wish I remember who made it, but they said it doesn't matter how long you've been in this industry, you're gonna learn from an event like this. And I thought that really summarized pretty quickly what Showcase is really about.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm pretty impressed with all levels of people that have attended Showcase this year. I mean, we have CEOs of member companies, we have senior VPs, we have investors, we have line staff, we have all levels, and they're all excited about it. And I think their excitement is emblematic of their excitement for the industry. As Jimmy Kirchdorfer says, it's great to be part of a growing industry. And you know what? We're part of that industry.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck with me this year, and this is my fourth Showcase, was kind of everyone's different experiences and people's different backgrounds being utilized for a common effort is really unique. A bunch of guys were talking about steel and concrete, stuff I didn't have a good background in coming in, and the people talking about steel and concrete, I've worked in that industry for 30 years, and they're kind of bringing over, what we need to know for us in a concise manner.
Yeah, yeah. Well done to you too. I mean, you were in charge of several of the classes. But hey, let's introduce this podcast. We had 6 speakers that were kind enough to spend some time with me in our little studio there in Showcase Hall. The first one was John Schumchyk from the Haugland Group. He's working on that very cool Champlain Hudson Power Express, which is bringing clean energy into New York City from renewable energy up there in Quebec. Very cool. And John is a great speaker. He's followed by Jimmy Kirchdorfer, CEO of ISCO. Jimmy's always got a great message, but my favorite part of his talk, Dan, was he's telling us when he got Scotty Scheffler out of jail last summer. I mean, what an unfortunate event. I mean, a gentleman was killed. Of course, Scotty didn't have anything to do with it, but Jimmy tells us that story. David Fink, always a great guest on the podcast, tells us about their move, PPI's move into training shorts, using YouTube, similar to what we've done. Sounds like they've got a pretty aggressive program going, and a program they call it PPI eLearn. And thank you to David for coming to Showcase and speaking. Richard Brand, who's been on the podcast before, and we've done webinars up in New Jersey. He's now 10 years into his polyethylene use, Dan, and he's spent a few minutes talking about how much his staff loves to fuse and use polyethylene because they don't have to work in the trench anymore. Just less than 10% of the time. That's my percentage, not his. But he talked about that fact. Then, of course, you spoke for a few minutes, and then Doug Keller from LYB talking to us about low sag materials.
That is quite an array of hosts. I have not listened to the podcast yet. I'm excited to get the first cut of it. I think that really describes pretty well what we did at Showcase, right? I mean, you just described 6 different people at very different points in the value chain.
Yeah. So we're very proud of it. So this is kind of a pop-up podcast. We weren't planning on doing this, but once again, I want to say thank you to WL Plastics for sponsoring this podcast and all the podcasts in 2024. And without further ado, Dan, let's release this podcast.
Yeah, let's hear from our guest. Thanks, Pete.
Greetings, Peter Dyke here from the Alliance for PE Pipe. Welcome back to the Poly Podcast. Quick shout out to my friends at WL Plastics. Dusty Langston, Richard Colassa, Josh Cottle, you guys are awesome. Thank you for sponsoring yet another edition of this great podcast that the industry enjoys from time to time. My first guest today from the show floor of PE Showcase 24 is John Schumchyk. John is a drilling expert from, I guess, all of New York is your region. Is that right?
Yeah, mostly Long Island, but we definitely focus on the entire tri-state area. Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Long Island.
Yeah, and I met John recently, and he agreed to come to Showcase and talk to our delegates about drilling and some of the things he's learned in the field. And with that, tell us a little bit more, John, about who you are and exactly what your company does.
Yeah, thank you. So again, my name is John Schumchyk. I'm the Executive Vice President of Eastern Utility Services, which is now a Haugland company. My brother founded the company originally back in 2001. I came on board as an owner shortly after that. We built the company together over the years. And then in 2019, our largest customer, Haugland Group, purchased us, made us a member of the company, and we've been running it for them ever since. So
you've been doing HDD. You've been doing HDD for quite a few years.
Yeah. Since the inception of the company, we used to rent our rigs, and Tommy put a trailer hitch on the back of his minivan and towed cable reels around. We did telecom work, and eventually broke into water main work, sewer main work, electrical work, and just built it over the years, and here we are 20 years later.
So when you and I were talking recently, and keep that mic a little bit closer.
You got it.
When you and I were talking recently, you were telling me you were working on that pretty cool project that I've heard about.
Yeah.
With polyethylene and other pipe materials running from Montreal, Quebec, somewhere in the province down to New York. Tell us a little bit about that project.
Yeah, sure. So it's the Champlain Hudson Express, and it's a renewable electric project that brings power from Quebec to New York City. It's definitely one of the coolest projects I've ever been on personally. In one aspect that makes it so cool is just the scale of it, right?
Yeah.
When you go out to the job site and you see the timber matting that they've had to lay down through farm fields and along highways, and it just the scale of it and the organization that's gone in to putting this whole project together. And every time you cross a piece of property, they have to get a new easement agreement. It's again, the scale of it is super impressive.
How many billions dollars is that project?
As I understand it, it's north of a $4 billion project.
And what is your company's responsibility?
We are one of 4 directional drilling contractors that are brought in as subs to do the crossings in areas where they can't open trench. So waterways, marshes, highways, railroad crossings. Anytime the pipe crosses over an area that can't be open cut, we'll drill that section.
So you're drilling it with HDPE?
Yes. Yep.
And what are they using in the open trench sections? Pipe material?
I believe they're using PVC in those areas.
Okay. So they're using multiple materials.
Yep.
And where are you working this week? Where is your team? You have multiple teams up there? Or?
Yeah. So we have 3 rigs up there running right now. All generally right around the Albany area, whether it's half an hour north or half an hour south of Albany, we're right around there.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier, John, that you've been using polyethylene for a number of years.
Yep.
Have you drilled with other materials?
Yeah, I've drilled with many other materials. A lot of the work in New York City is galvanized steel, which is an absolute nightmare to work with. We hate doing it, and we use every opportunity we can to try to talk them out of it.
All right, so help our audience understand the differentiation between working with a steel versus polyethylene from a driller's perspective.
Sure. Well, when you exit the ground with a directional drill, you need to pull the product back into the ground at whatever angle you exit. And if you are trying to pull steel pipe, for one, if it's entering the ground the way the drill rod comes out, which is at an angle like this, now your product is going to be up in the air if it's steel because it can't bend down like polyethylene can. So now you're trying to work in a congested city area with a piece of pipe sticking up head level or possibly higher, trying to be pulled into the ground. It's just not feasible. So then what you'll get into is having to open a receiving pit that's as long as your pipe string. Could be 20 feet long, which again, in the city environment is not feasible.
Wait, so you said it's as long as your pipe string, or is it as long as the end that's sticking out of the ground?
Well, exactly right. So your pipe string is as long as it can be. So generally in the city, you could only be maybe 20 feet because it's not bendable. So that you'll have to open that 20 feet below grade alongside a road or next to a sidewalk or something, so you can then pull that straight into the ground.
Interesting.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So further differentiation. How about from a cost standpoint when you're buying pipe? What's more expensive, polyethylene or steel?
Steel is much more expensive.
Yeah.
Much, much more expensive.
But it's a minor part of a contract cost. So the owner doesn't care, or do they care?
Well, it depends on who the owner is. A lot of times these municipal organizations, it's just the cost of doing business for them. They're just assuming it's all going to be steel.
Right.
But yeah, you would definitely save the money, and it would, in my opinion, it would probably last longer under the ground too if it was polyethylene.
So if an owner wants steel, do you bid it steel and then try to get them to change?
Yes,
How does that work?
Yes, you have to bid it as per the documents. You always bid it as it's written in the documents, and then you could try to talk them out of it later, and even give them a credit back. Say, hey, we can save you money here. You want to save money? Switch it to HDPE. It makes it easier on us. You save the material cost. Win-win for everybody.
So working throughout New York and the region, how many times in the last 5 years were you successful in changing it from what was bid to polyethylene? Is it like 5 times, or is
several times off the top of my head? I'd say more than 5, less than 10 times.
So it does work.
It does work. Yeah. If you can get an engineer, because all the documents say that you're going to adhere to these specs unless dictated differently by the engineer.
Mm-hmm.
You could talk to the project engineer. You could show them other cases where it has been changed, and you can change.
All right. So in this podcast, John, it's a short version. We're not doing the long version. What one message would you have to an owner to either affect the specs or to influence them, that something you've learned about polyethylene that you want to share? What would that be?
Well, I would say that it's a lot tougher than people think. The pipe itself, it can bend in miraculous ways and go back to true, and written in the spec, those things need to be taken into consideration, right? So a lot of times the pipe does not need to be suspended for the entire string of the pipe. The pipe is 2,000 feet long. The pipe can lay on the ground while it's being pulled in by the drill. It doesn't need to be on cradles. It doesn't need to be on rollers the whole time. Around a corner, around the side of a building, over a sidewalk where you could get a gouge, sure. But for the entire length of the pipe, in my opinion, I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, so you're seeing specs that call for a full suspension of the entire string, because that's what they're used to, because they're afraid of damaging the pipe.
Exactly. A lot of other pipes cannot handle being pulled along the ground or being moved great distances.
That's kind of a weird issue because, polyethylene, for being as tough as it is, you can gouge it. So a lot of engineers will think, oh my God, if it gouges, it must be, a dainty pipe or a pipe that's, we're worried about damaging.
Which is completely opposite my experience.
Yeah.
I find it one of the toughest, most resilient type of pipe that we work with.
Yeah, well, that's exciting to know. Yeah. Well, John Schumchyk, awesome to talk to you and see you again. You too, Thanks for coming to PE Showcase.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right, for the next segment, I'm delighted to be sitting next to Jimmy Kirchdorfer, Chairman and CEO of ISCO Industries down in Louisville. Welcome, Jimmy Kirchdorfer.
Thank you, Peter. Good to be here. Good to see so much energy at the showcase this year.
Yeah, well, it's been a very good year for the Alliance from the terms of how many people we've seen, Jimmy, but we've never seen this much support for Showcase before. We have 22 sponsors and over 260 people. And we have some special guests as well. We've got 6 kids from ASU in the civil engineering program that are coming to the show. Thanks to Alan Ambler for getting those kids here. But the message is making it, I think.
Well, Peter, the future of HDPE pipe is bright, and it's evident here to see the companies spending their resources to sponsor and to have and to send attendees here, because it's not cheap to send your people here, right? And they, you taking them out of their sales territory or whatever and sending them here. But to see so many people doing that shows a lot of people are making bets on HDPE.
Yeah, for sure. And Jimmy, your team, you guys have sent, 25 people here this year. And I remember it's been 4 years ago, Jimmy, since you addressed this group, and you kind of gave the group the message of it's a good time to be in the polyethylene business. And look at how far we've come even in those 4 years.
I was talking to people like a Harvey Svetlik, who's been in the business for years and years and years, taught me. I was like, Harvey, these people now coming and going through these seminar that, maybe their first year in HDPE. I went and learned from you, and there's probably 4 of us in a conference room and at Driscoll Pipe, and learning that. So to see the resources that are available now to be able to do that is great.
Yeah, well, Harvey's moved to Phoenix, and he called me up and said, hey, can I come to Showcase? What do you mean, can you come? We'd love it if you'd come to Showcase. And Harvey invented, of course, the Harvey adapter, as you know, which is now known as the MJ adapter. And Jimmy, I think you sell a lot of those MJs.
Yeah, and I was there when he kind of invented it. We were at Indianapolis Water. When we first called on them, and I was very involved in getting them to use HDPE for the very first time in the 90s. And they said, how do you connect it to an MJ? How do you connect it to this valve? And before we got involved, the person that sold them HDPE pipe didn't explain that to them. And they just shoved it in like they would PVC, didn't have a restraint, and had all kind of failures. And but anyway, Harvey, being innovative, came up with the MJ adapter, which was really helped us, have a more system product offering in the water industry.
Well, I love hearing that story. Your anecdote about what happened in Indianapolis has happened multiple times with cities throughout the country. And as I've learned, I like to talk about failure because we learn more from failure than we do success. And so what you learned in Indianapolis, these lessons need to be told. And that's part of what we do at the Alliance. We talk about failure because, we've solved the typical failure mechanisms of all the other pipe types. We don't suffer from brittle failure like PVC does. We don't have running cracks anymore, Jimmy. We can get a point load on a piece of pipe, and that crack used to run. It doesn't anymore. These resin guys have figured it out. And another thing I learned about from East Bay Mud to, embellish this story from Indianapolis a little bit is they learned that the engineers said, we love polyethylene and you guys have to use it if you're going to work in East Bay utility. But they forgot how to do electrofusion correctly.
Yeah.
So they end up all these years later, Jimmy, with failing electrofusion saddles. So they have a negative attitude about polyethylene.
Yeah.
But part of what we're trying to do, and you teach your sales guys, is let's cover that downside by using proper training.
Right.
And you guys have done a great job with training.
And in my frustration in the industry before was a lot of companies competitive of ours would sell a project and not be trained, not even know much about HDPE pipe, and not be vested in the success of the product because they did sell their materials. So what I'm seeing now is people like, let's make sure our people are trained so we don't have that issue. We have educated, knowledgeable, technical people in front of the customers, municipalities or whoever.
Oh, for sure.
Which has made big strides, which is one of the reasons we'll continue to compound our success.
Yeah. It's so important, the training. I had a class early this morning we call the accountability triad. And one of the fundamental elements of that triad is training and the importance of training. And, the PVC guys love to say, oh, yeah, all we have to do is teach our guys how to put the bell and spigot together in the trench. Yeah, you go with polyethylene, you got to learn how to do fusion, like it's a bad thing, right? Yeah, when you do fusion, you end up with a product that's going to last 100, if not 200, 300 years long. Well, Jimmy, I just want to make a quick note that this guy right here sitting next to me was responsible for creating the Alliance back in 2007, 2008. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah, that was, it just gives me so much joy to see where it is now, coming from just kind of a vision or really seeing a problem, in like that our industry had, and let's find a solution. So back then we were if you think about the times, the industry was booming, but it was booming on, I called it fake growth, like not sustainable growth. The mining business was hot, oil and gas was hot, and we're all, saying, hey, look how much pipe we sold. But I'm like, hey, these are the kind of markets that could turn, and look what happened in 08 and 09. Right after that, they turned, and then we're sitting here saying, so I said, we can't rely so much on commodity market. We need to rely, we need to find more sustainable markets, which obviously the water market is. I mean, that's so much more consistent.
Yeah, it's kind of like the natural gas market. It's always going to be there.
It's always there. Growth in population, there's a need, huge infrastructure need. The products that are there now, we have such a competitive advantage over, but we didn't have a united front in the industry. ISCO was doing a lot of what we called fusion academies. We would go around the country and do what is kind of the road show now, but we were doing them as one company and realizing that we are so much stronger to a customer or a potential customer united as an industry than we are as one company. So we show up as the PE Alliance, bringing them to a PE Alliance roadshow. It's much more effective than any one company in this doing it themselves. So, because I think we just look stronger as an industry. So,
exactly,
how could we get an organization to work on really customer-facing issues that are holding us back? It was always frustrating when you have a superior product and you're not getting the market share you deserve. And I was like, in the municipal side of it, we weren't getting the market share that we deserve, and we're still not. On the merits of our product, right?
Right.
And so I got some people. That Dave Hughes is one that I think is still here.
Dave Hughes is still in the room.
Dave is a guy I got. Rocky Wade from Central Plastics at the time.
George Fisher Piping Systems now. Yeah.
Rocky's now retired from there. Ron Hopton Jones actually was independent pipe, actually selling their business. George Fisher. We had Dave Morgan at Performance Pipe, who was a great proponent for the PE Alliance.
Yeah, for years, Performance Pipe was a big fan of the Alliance.
Yeah, and then Mike Dahl was with WL Plastics at the time, and he was involved. So kind of got all these guys together. I said, come, let's go play golf and let's dream here, and came up with the idea.
Yeah, and then, so that was 2008, and then we had our first roadshow in 2011 in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And here we are today. Jimmy, we were in front of 9,000 people this year.
Yeah, well, Peter, a lot of that's your vision, your execution. And, a lot of people, as I've seen it, I've been a part of a lot of associations, right? I mean, there's industry associations for everything you can think of. And a lot of the guys are but they're organizers, right? They plan the events, they work the membership and all that, but they don't become true advocates and believers like you have of HDP pipe. I mean, you could technically rebuild these equipment. You could talk to somebody technically as well as anybody in the industry, and you took that step, which not many of your peers that run organizations have. And I think you're way more, I've been doing this a long time. I'd much rather have you go tell the HDP story than myself, because you're just in it and passionate about it. And that's your vision and leadership has really taking this on.
Well, thank you, Jimmy. It's been a pleasure to serve the industry, and seeing the way it's grown and developed over time and turned into what Showcase is today. And, this is our attempt, Jimmy, to educate the industry about itself and its products, and it's working. And thank you to you for starting it and making it all happen. Before we go, Jimmy,
one thing I want to add on that is, like, I think when we talked about the knowledge is in our room. It's just not disseminated. And I remember you and I talking about that. I'm like, you don't need to a lot of the knowledge is within the companies in our industry.
Right.
So what you're doing here is your speakers are in the industry. You're having that shared throughout. It's not like we had to go get a lot of third parties to come teach us what to do or hire consulting firms to teach us what to do. I'm like, no, right. The knowledge is here. We just got to share it amongst one company to another company for the common cause of growing it. And that's
And one of the things you were so good about, Jimmy, was making sure that if you attended an Alliance event, you were part of an Alliance deal, that you wore that black Alliance shirt. Mm-hmm. And what that effectively does, it says, yeah, you may work for ISCO, you may work for WL or Performance or Modern Polymer, but we want you wearing that black shirt because we want to prove to everybody that we are an industry, we are one, and we are much stronger together than we are separate. That's been really successful.
Yeah, and if we grow, there's the key is, a growing industry, then everybody will compete against each other, but we'll all have, every year, hopefully more business to get. And if there's not growing, then so at the end of the day, it benefits everybody in the industry if it's growing, and it benefits the customer because we're
For sure.
taking them a superior product.
Yeah. Another key, Jimmy, that you did was you stepped back. You started this organization and you realized that other distributors needed to benefit from this organization as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we saw failures out there when the distributor salesperson didn't know our product and had a customer saying, "Can I get HDPE pipe?" They would say, "Yeah, I can get that." They would sell it, but they weren't educated enough to really make sure, and they didn't even have a vested interest all the time to make sure it was a success. So how can we all share that information? Because, this was not about ISCO as far as it was about growing the industry, and we'll get our share as well, everybody will as it grows.
Yep, exactly.
But it's the important thing of us showing up knowledgeable about the product to the customers we're trying to grow. Yeah. And that's what HDP, that was the mission. And that's what's happened. I mean, you see so many people getting some of these classes here, and you see 60 people sitting in there learning about, the benefits of HDPE over ductile iron or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And you're like, that is fantastic what's happening right there. And those people sitting in there, when they go face to face with customers, will be so much more knowledgeable talking about the benefits of our product. They'll talk about their company too, right? Everybody wants to tell their company story. But more importantly in this industry is tell the HDPE pipe story.
Yeah. And it's a good one. I have a class this afternoon called HDPE Innovation, and we talk about you, but it's all the innovation in the industry over the years. We have a lot to be proud of. It's really an exciting
We have
product.
a lot to be proud of. And I was thinking about when I was a salesperson, I remember, early 90s and get HDPE and no one knew what it was. And
Sure.
all that. And I came back to the office one day, I think it was before cell phones and all. I was like, hey, I'm excited. I got a project I'm working on. It's a large diameter project, and it was 24 inches, and now there's a squeeze off tool over there for 24 inches.
24.
We can pinch it off, right? So, just how innovative it is on everything, really, the size of the pipe, the wall thickness, the fittings, the joining, the pipe handling, the efficiency of putting it together. We are a very innovative industry, and we listen to the customers, we see what's holding us back, and we innovate. And the piece we got to continue to get better at is the educating of the customer. Like I said, we have a superior product, and if people don't choose it, it's on us that we haven't really told the story.
Yeah, it's exciting. We could talk about this all day long, but before you go, I just wanted to ask you about the PGA Championship and your involvement with the PGA. Tell us about that.
You talking about the ISCO Championship or the PGA Championship?
Well, that was. Let's set up the story with what you did last year, and then finish it with what's happening this year.
Yeah, it was a dream come true that I had the opportunity to buy Valhalla. Got a couple friends, and we bought it. It's been a little over 2 years now, and we're hosting a major championship. As a lifelong big golfer, I own a golf course that's hosting a major championship, which something I didn't wake up at the beginning of the year thinking I wanted to do. You got to be opportunistic in life, and when things pop in front of you that you don't expect, you got to pounce on it. But so we did that in having the center of the golf world be Louisville, Kentucky, in the course that I'm an owner of. And obviously there was a lot of drama that week. To go down to the jail cell.
Yeah, he actually picked somebody. He actually picked somebody up at jail and said, "Hey, let's get you back to the golf course."
That was the scariest. I was woken up to that. Like Scotty Scheffler's headed to jail, and first thing I was like, "What is his tee time?" I'm like, if he doesn't play in this event, I just knew, he's such a dominant number one player, the biggest favorite in a major. This is like Secretariat not running in one of the Triple Crown events. I'm like, everybody, people paid money to come to see the hottest golfer on the planet, and I'm like, we're going to lock him up and not let him play in our tournament, and we're going to forever be known by that. So anyway, I was lucky. I went into full crisis mode, called everybody I knew,
Yeah, how do you prepare for that one?
We're not prepared, and telling everybody if we don't, we're going to look like, as city, we're going to look horrible if we allow this to happen. So we were able to kind of rush it through. It was a felony he was booked for, which was a joke, but at the end of the day, you can't say that until
until the proof comes out.
Proof comes out. Yeah. But we got him there, and that was a drama. And he played great that day. I think he shot 65 or 66 after I dropped him off, and he was great. I have so much respect for that guy. He never once complained, acted like a victim. Like I can't. Yeah. He was just like
really seemed like a gentleman.
He is a true gentleman. I learned a lot from it. He was literally half my age. It's not often you learn so much from somebody that's half your age.
Right. And then let's move forward to what's happening in 25.
Yeah. So, like my wife
golf tournament.
Couldn't get enough of pro golf, so you had to do. So there was a PGA Tour event that was in Kentucky that was looking for a title sponsor, or they're going to have to leave, and so ISCO stepped up, and we're the title sponsor of a PGA Tour event, which that was a kind of a dream of mine. It's like I want to grow our business to where we can kind of, because you look at the other companies that are title sponsors, they're big companies. So we're actually we're moving it to Louisville for the first time in 2025. It'll be at Hirschman Country Club in Louisville. And we're going to take this time. We're going to have the golfing world watching a lot of them. It's not a major championship, but it's still a PGA event.
Yeah, it's a PGA event.
We're excited about. And highlight some of the issues, and you're going to be involved of, hey, world that's watching this, there's water loss issues and resources that we're losing because of that, and maybe get a little bit of a chance.
Yeah, and we have a solution. I mean, I'm excited about it, Jimmy, because it puts polyethylene center stage, and it allows us to compare our great product with other materials and demonstrate that, hey, guys, there's an issue out there. It's underground. You're not paying attention. Right. But we have the solution. And ISCO is, now this name, I've talked for years, Jimmy, about not wanting to boil the ocean. And we just don't have the resources to educate the public about polyethylene. This is the first time an organization in the polyethylene pipe world, I should say, has elevated their company and therefore the industry to the household level.
Right. So it's exciting. We actually get commercials as part of our title sponsorship, TV commercials, which we've never done. So, but creating that awareness that, hey, and other people have done it with what AT&T talks about, like don't drive distracted or whatever. Humana was a title sponsor, which was talking a lot about health. Their health insurance company.
Sure.
Get your steps in every day, be healthy. I think our message.
John Deere.
Yeah, John Deere, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of great companies that had it's not just about buy my product. It's about, let me give you a kind of a greater message. And ours is, be aware this country's, the aging infrastructure in pipelines is causing problems in water and sewer pipes. And, it just so happens that this industry has a solution.
Yeah, it's exciting. Well, Jimmy Kirchdorfer, you're always welcome on the Poly Podcast. What a great conversation. Great to see you again.
Yep. Thanks, Peter.
My next guest is David Fink, president of the Plastics Pipe Institute. Welcome, David Fink.
Pete, thanks. Always great to be here, and look forward to speaking to your attendees and just kind of giving them an update on what PPI has been doing lately.
Yeah, so we're at Showcase, and David is speaking when?
I'm actually tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and I'll be just giving an overview of what our divisions have been up to, mainly highlight, obviously, our municipal stuff, areas that your attendees are really focused in on. And then also just bring up to speed a little bit on some of our great committee work. We're moving forward actually with a new hire of a director for sustainability.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, big deal. Hopefully have the gentleman on board to begin the year. And really what we're seeing is our two most attended committees outside of technical have been these two. So it's a great opportunity to bring somebody in, and we talk this language of EPRs and LCAs and EPDs, but it's the life cycle analysis, it's the carbon footprint. It's this circular economy that we have such a great story to tell. We just need to do a better job getting out in front of people.
Before we spend time talking about that, tell us, here at Showcase, David, we educate our delegates on their products. Yes. We talk about installation methods. We talk about, one of the big classes this morning was HDPE versus ductile iron. But at a PPI event, it's totally different. I mean, you guys are a scientific organization. You have committee meetings. What does PPI do?
Sure. So we've been around actually for almost 75 years now, founded in 1950. And really, as you stated, our genesis has been the technical work. So we bring competitors together that collaborate on codes and standards and regulations. We're writing installation manuals, design calculators, design guidelines, model specifications. And I want to thank your organization because you do a great job helping build our brand, because a lot of the technical information that you're educating these attendees on is PPI generated. And I think it's a great feedback loop as well, because sometimes questions come up from this audience that then we can go do our homework on and hopefully come up with those technical solutions. So that is really our heart and soul at PPI, is that technical lift, if you will.
Well, I'll say, to your point, we use technical notes, which are known as TNs and TRs, every week. We're referencing them. We're sending them to people saying, here's the support so that you can make that decision and go ahead with your polyethylene project.
Yeah, and one thing that we're seeing, and I'm sure you are in your organization as well, is there are a lot of new faces. There is a generation that's retiring and or going into consulting, as we like to joke. That's the new retirement, is consulting. But there's a lot of new faces that really need this education. And you're not taught HDPE piping systems in college. So I'm glad organizations exist for that educational aspect.
Yeah, and as the markets continue to grow, David, the way we approach the market and the way we serve the market, really the need for both of our organizations becomes super apparent to me.
Yeah.
And the fact that you and I both have great support, I have 175 members, you have more than that, is evidence that the market sees that need as well.
Absolutely, and it's continuing to grow. We're seeing new startups and entrants into this. We're seeing some European equipment manufacturers making their way to the States because we have a growing market here in North America. That isn't true around the world. So this is a bright future for polyethylene piping systems here in North America.
Tell me about, at the latest PPI event that I attended back in last month down in Texas,
Yes.
David, you guys had some exciting video content available.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So what we're seeing is this new generation coming into the workforce doesn't want to read that 1,000-page textbook, right? It's a paperweight, it's a doorstop. So we have created what we're calling training shorts.
Okay.
And they are just that. They are meant to be 60, 90, 120-second little teasers, and kind of like a movie trailer, if you will. It kind of gets you hooked on the content, and then there's the link if you want to go read that chapter in the book or dig into more detail. In addition, we are also creating a learning management system called PPI eLearn. So it is online modules. You can watch these 10 to 20-minute videos and then take a quick quiz, and it's available for continuing education. So it's another way of getting out there and trying to educate the masses. The days of lunch and learns still work, but you're subject to whoever can come there that day. We're seeing that there's a generation that maybe wants to learn after their kids are in bed. So they're plugging in online and taking some of these courses late at night.
Wow. And you're seeing volume?
We are. And it's amazing. One of the few times that I've actually paid for promotion that's worked is just doing some banner ads out on some trade magazines and in the industry. And we've seen thousands upon thousands of hits for these modules. So it is making an impact. And the training shorts, by the way, are on our YouTube channel. So just Google Plastics Pipe Institute YouTube, and you can see all those great training shorts that are out there.
Well, to that point, we don't promote, we don't pay for any advertising. We have hundreds of listens in our podcast.
Yes.
We're not exactly Joe Rogan. And we're now seeing more YouTube views of our podcasts, David, than we are on podcast listens.
This is the generation. YouTube is the second most used search engine. I mean, my kids live on it, and I'm finding myself even at my age finding more content that I find very exciting to follow. And you guys have done a great job with your podcast, so I congratulate on that.
Well, thanks. You're part of that. Our audience likes to hear from you because our organizations are intertwined.
It's exactly right. Very complimentary, and always a pleasure working with you.
Yeah. So with that, David Fink, thank you for visiting the Poly Podcast yet again.
Thanks for the opportunity, Pete. Appreciate it.
My next guest is none other than Richard Brand, engineer with the East Windsor Municipal Utility Authority in the Garden State.
It's good to be here, Pete.
Welcome back, Richard. Richard hits the podcast once a year when he comes down to Showcase, and thank you for participating at Showcase and being an expert.
You're welcome anytime. You know that.
You told me about a very cool project. You've been using polyethylene for 10 years?
Yeah, 12 years.
12 years. How's it going?
It's going good. Going good. We finally got our crew certified in butt fusion and electrofusion.
And you own a big machine.
Yes. Yeah,
What'd you get?
We bought a 618.
Okay.
McRoy 618. And we also bought a brand new track hoe. And we just finished up a job. We ran 3,500 linear feet of 16-inch to a new facility that we're building. We're building a new administration, maintenance, and a new water treatment plant. It's approximately about a $40 million project.
Wow. How'd you fund that?
Well, we're funding it through what they call the I-Bank or the SRF, which is the State Revolving Fund. It's money that's given through from the federal government to the EPA, which then distributes it down to the local levels of the states.
So you got some of that $2 trillion that the administration passed a couple years ago.
Yeah, we're hoping to get some, yes.
Yeah, nice.
Yes.
Okay, 12 years using polyethylene because it's been a while,
Yes,
right?
it has.
That you've been using it. How many miles do you have in your system now?
We have about 43 miles of polyethylene. We put in about 20 miles of new pipe also. On top of that, so I'm sorry, we have about 60 some miles of pipe.
Of HDPE.
Yep.
How's it going?
It's going real good. It really is. Our breakage rate has dropped down by about 75%. We're only getting about 2 or 3 main breaks right now a year. And the reason why that is obviously we replaced a lot of the bad pipe that we had, ductile iron. And some of the existing ductile iron has not failed yet, but we know it's going to. So we're just getting on top of it. We're replacing about anywhere between 2 to 4 miles a year.
Richard, of the 2 to 4 water main breaks you see a year, whatever the number is that in polyethylene or is that in...
No, that's in ductile iron.
And how old is the ductile iron that's failing?
It's anywhere between 30 to 45 years.
Okay. And did you wrap your ductile iron in polyethylene?
No.
Okay.
No, it has not been wrapped.
All right. Are you permitting any other materials in your system today other than polyethylene?
No, we're strictly, we adopted HDPE in our rules and regulations, and all new development also has to install high-density polyethylene pipe. And the reason, again, is that we're seeing these failures of 30 to 40 years age of a pipe, and we do not want our... One is, it's revenue loss for us because the breakage, obviously the leakage is going to lose revenue for us internally, and also the property owner, by putting in cheaper material, it's going to cost them more in the long run. So we do sit down with all of our developers. We discuss it and talk to them about, what we require and what they have to install, and they're all on board with it. They understand, and it's working out very well.
Well, that's nice to hear, and kind of easier for you to do that with a municipal organization that serves 20,000 people. What is
no, 30,000.
30,000 people, and how many miles do you have in your system?
We have 240 some miles of water main and 215 miles of gravity sewer. And we have about 20 miles of force main.
On the water side, Richard, are you using copper services or polyethylene services?
We have both in our system. If we run into a service that has polyethylene there, we continue the use of the polyethylene. But if it has copper, we kind of leave the copper. And the reason why is because a lot of the electrical panels are grounded through the copper. And we have, it's a liability issue as far as the MUA. Our attorney has, advised us to kind of stay the course with what's there.
So how do you, if a homeowner doesn't want to ground the house on the copper and or you want to use polyethylene, how do you navigate that? Well, or do you just avoid it?
If they'll sign off on it, if they want polyethylene, we'll allow them to sign off on it, and then it takes the liability away from us as far as for grounding.
Okay. If you had a choice in your new development, do you permit developers to ground the electric panel on the service?
No, we would prefer them not to.
Okay.
And we do request that.
All right. But you require polyethylene in new development on the mains. Do you require polyethylene on the service?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So they won't be able to then ground it.
Right.
They've got to use a grounding rod or whatever.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Which would be a better practice anyway,
Yes.
to not combine the utilities or
Right.
attach them in any way. Is that
Right.
correct?
Yes. But for existing services, we'll approach the homeowner and let them know that, hey, do you want to continue your copper? We noticed that, copper services are, the corrosion or corrosivity of the soils are attacking the copper also. So,
Honestly, they're regulated as a poison
yeah.
in the lead and copper rule.
Yes.
It's just we conveniently don't acknowledge that as an issue.
Yeah.
What I think is going to happen is EPA's, once they get all the lead out, then they're going to go after the copper.
Copper. Yep.
I mean, I think that's next.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic story. I mean, that story that you're weaving is really a pretty interesting one. The industry loves to listen to this podcast, and I'm delighted for that. We don't have a lot of municipal owners or engineers that listen, but let's assume a few are. What one message, as the leader of your water utility, what one message would you have to share with somebody about this decision or your use at this point?
Well, I can say this, that when we originally had our problems with our ductile iron, we knew that we had a problem with the metallic pipes in the system. So we knew that we had to go to either C900 or HDPE. C900 required saddles. And also you have the bell and spigot joints. You have a leakage rate. Whereas HDPE is a monolithic system. You will not have any leaks whatsoever. It's 100% leak proof, and it eliminates your problems. And we have circumference brakes, circle brakes. We also have a lot of pitting
On the cast iron.
on the cast iron and
Yeah.
ductile iron pipes, and on the AC pipe we have saddles, and the saddles are rotting off of them. So, we have multiple problems with the metallic systems. On the HDPE, we do not have any of that problem. We don't have those problems. So, it is a product that you really got to look at. Also, for installation wise, like I said, we just did 3,500 linear feet of 16-inch high density polyethylene DR11. It was all butt fused. And we put in MJ adapters, put in valves, hydrants. It was all done above ground. And our guys did not have to get in a hole. The only time we had to get in a hole and we had to put shoring boxes in was at the connection at the existing main. That was the only time we were in the hole. After that, we strapped it, put it on our backhoe, lifted it up, and dropped it right into
God, your staff must love doing that. Nobody likes going in the hole.
Absolutely. And to bolt up the valves, you can bolt them up so much easier above ground than below ground.
Yeah, you're not on your knees.
Exactly. And you're not down below and getting stuck in the mud and the dirt.
Right.
It's so much of it, I can't stress how easy it is for the installation.
All right, one final question here. You talk about failure of other pipe types. Have you ever, 12 years, have you had any polyethylene failures?
None whatsoever.
And do you attribute that to training, the spec? I mean, your passion? I mean, what is it
It's everything. It's HDPE. It's the pipe.
Yeah.
Is really what it is.
Yeah, you can't. You're not taking credit for it.
No.
Yeah.
You butt fuse.
You should though.
It's a simple process. All you got to do is you make sure the ends are clean. You butt fuse it, and you go on to the next joint, and you just keep going on, and it's easy.
Wow,
It really
Richard,
is.
that's fantastic. What a great story. So this is Richard Brand, Executive Director with the East Windsor Municipal Utility Authority. Where are you in New Jersey?
We're in central New Jersey. We're about 10 miles east of the capital, Trenton.
Yeah. Okay. It's kind of the center of the state.
Yeah. We're dead center.
Awesome. Well, with that, Richard Brand, thank you so much for coming to PE Showcase and being on the Poly Podcast.
You're very welcome, Pete. Anytime.
Our next guest is Dan Landy, engineer with the Alliance for PE Pipe. Usually he's helping me produce these events. Today, he's sitting in the guest chair. Welcome, Dan Landy.
Yeah, got one. Got right back at 1 o'clock. 9 markets to find. Talking about the 9 PE markets.
Well, that's a great episode. Dan, I wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about the engineering program and how our distributor members are taking better advantage of this resource, if you will, for the industry. Tell us what's really happened in 24 and how it's evolved.
Yeah, so we didn't even really consider those opportunities, or I guess we didn't have a name for it in year 1 or 2. So we started following those under alliance partnerships, meaning the distributors are bringing us these opportunities and these leads, rather than us going out into the industry and trying to do everything on our own. So typically when engineers do have issues, they'll reach out to the distributors. They are, the point of contact across the entire country. They're at every city, every state, calling on every customer. So they're just handing off those opportunities to us that are a little bit more technical than a typical sales call. But we protect our distributors as well. So
what does that mean?
We do a really good job tracking not only what company brought us the lead, but all the way down to what specific salesperson. Because if Core & Main brings us a really good opportunity and then we tell ISCO about it, Core & Main's not bringing us another opportunity anytime soon.
Yeah, so we protect them. We don't share information.
Absolutely, right.
Yeah, that's true. What kind of questions are you getting these days?
Yeah, I would say, the bucket of the 5 or 10 initial questions are pretty steady. The initial learning curve. I will say, now that we've been established longer, we're getting into a lot more intricate problems. One, because I think people are trusting us more so than they have in the past. But two, we're getting in at an earlier stage on projects that do require a higher level of engineering than, maybe a project that's going out to bid. If a project's going out to bid next year, it's probably been in the works for at least a year. But now, we're designing projects 2, 3, 4 years away, and they require a lot more heavy lifting.
Are you seeing a shift in the kind of questions you get, or are they all still pretty consistent with what we were getting a couple years ago?
Yeah, some industries use different terminology. I still think if the design is open-ended and they're looking for input, I consider that in my head a design-build opportunity. And we're getting a lot more so into design-build opportunities where the owner is up to, what is the best solution. They're not trying to figure out, they haven't already decided we're going open cut. How do I do open cut? They're saying, hey, here's what I need to do. How would you do it if you had the opportunity to design it yourself?
Cool. How are they communicating with you? Are they calling you? Are they emailing you? What do you find?
Yeah, initially it's, you get a lot of the requests too, and you just forward them over to me. So I get them from you, I get them from our webinar program, also directly to myself and from our alliance partnerships. Really the first thing I want to know is, do you have a drawing set? Hey, let's talk through that. Let's get that file sent over to us. And then, we have a few Ps on staff that are really good at deciphering kind of what's happening on projects and identifying common mistakes. So the best thing for us is still to get on a Zoom call. Unfortunately, we haven't come up with a better approach than that, but it's very efficient on others' times, right? Let's not have an email chain going back and forth. Let's sit down and talk about what's important to you.
Good. Well, Dan Landy, awesome. Thank you for stopping in and bringing us up to date on the Alliance's engineering program.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the rest of the week, Pete. This is really a real treat being out here, and I think everyone's having a great time.
Yeah, no doubt. Thank you, Dan Landy.
See you soon.
All right, my next guest is Doug Keller from LyondellBasell. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me on.
Well, Doug has been a regular contributor to the podcast program, certainly, but also, and more importantly, a regular on our roadshow programs and our webinars. So we run a bunch of different programs here at the Alliance, as many of you are aware. But Doug is an expert on all kinds of polyethylene resin. Tell us what is new with resins today. What's going on in the resin business?
Also, Pete, what we're seeing, and you've seen this as well, is a growth in the size of the pipes. So as you like to say, 24 used to be big. When I started, 54 was like, wow, that's a pretty big pipe.
Right.
And now we're looking at, 65, 80, 90-inch pipe. So as we go to those larger pipes, what we're having to deal with is the fact that the material cools at the same rate. But now we have a much thicker wall in order to handle the same pressure and have the same DR. So what that ends up doing is, as the material is cooling, it is under the force of gravity, and in the center of the pipe, it's actually still molten. And it can take for example, a 36-inch DR9 pipe takes 11 hours for the center of that pipe to solidify.
Wow. Do the pipe companies, do they cut that pipe before it solidifies?
In some cases, you do. So if you have it solid enough, you could actually make that cut.
Wow.
Their big concern is they have the tracks that pull the pipe, the puller that pulls on the pipe, and it's putting pressure in the radial direction on the pipe. So you want that pipe to be solid enough that you don't ovalize it because of the force of pulling it through. Right. So usually it is still somewhat molten. So the issue that you run into is since it's under the force of gravity, that material starts to slump down to the bottom, and you get a pipe that's thicker on the bottom than on the top. Now they can adjust the die to put more material at the top at the beginning of the line and allow it to kind of even out. But at some point you get to a point where you can't make pipe. Because as we know, you have to have a pipe with a minimum wall thickness. And so in order to be min wall on the top, you may be, in some cases, 50 to 100% thicker on the bottom, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So what the polyethylene manufacturers have done is created low slump or low sag materials. And so the way to think about this is think about two hair combs.
Okay.
And if you try to if you kind of intermesh the teeth of the hair comb and try to pull it apart, there's a lot of resistance there. So what we've been able to do is to create molecular entanglement in the material that helps it to resist the slumping. So that it just kind of retards its ability to flow, makes it a much more viscous material. That way, we're able to create more uniform wall thickness, which is great when you're talking about fusion, because you don't want to have to be rotating these large pipes to fuse thick to thick.
Sure.
If the wall thickness is off. Plus, our pipe manufacturers sell by the foot, but they're buying by the pound. So the less material that they can put into, the less wasted material that they have in the pipe, the better off they're going to be.
All right, so what does this mean to the market specifically? What has the market been able to do with these new resins that you guys are making?
So now, I mean, you just had that recent example, I think, of the 54-inch DR11, which is a 5 1/4 inch wall, something like that.
Yeah, OD divided by min wall, so the OD is 54 inches, and it's a DR11. Yeah, that's over 5 inches wall thickness.
Yeah. So what that does is it allows our pipe manufacturers to go bigger and thicker. So
do they have to put different dies in their machines to do that?
No, you're going to still have. Well, it would be a different die as you're going larger. You're going to have to go to a larger bushing, and then you're going to have the bushing in pin sets. So it is an expense on their side to make sure that they can get that size made. But now we're making it so that not only are they using less material, they're more confident that where they first measure the thickness, which is typically after the first vacuum tank, which could be 30 feet down the line,
right?
They know that whatever thickness they measure, it's going to hold because it's 11 hours later before they cut it. And you could have 50 to 100,000 pounds of material in that line that you've just potentially wasted because you don't know what the final dimensions are on it.
Got it. All right. So low slump resin is a thing.
Yeah.
It is responsible for us going after these really big diameter transmission lines and canal conversions. What is a canal conversion?
So out here in the West, we're out in Phoenix at the moment, a lot of the canals that deliver water into the city are open trench. So they're typically concrete lined, but as you know, concrete cracks. So not only do you have evaporation, but you also have seepage into the ground. So you can usually pick out these channels pretty easily from an airplane because everything around them is green. And if you've been here in the summertime in Phoenix, you can just watch the water evaporate. You can just see the cloud of humidity coming off of it. So what they're looking at is because it's a precious resource, because there's less rain and less snow on the western slopes of the Rocky Mountains, they're actually covering these. And so when you're doing a canal conversion, it's typically a gravity flow. So it's not a high pressure situation. It can be a relatively thin pipe. But it allows them to recover probably the 35 to 50% water loss that they have.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. So low slump resin, low sag, if you will.
Yeah.
What's on the horizon? Just more thicker walls, better low slump resin, or is anything else? Chlorine resistance? Any other issues that you're looking at?
So what we're starting to hear a lot of talk about is the resist grades, which are higher slow crack growth resistance grades out of Europe. The way they're being marketed is that you can basically whatever you dig out of the trench, you throw it right back on top. So you don't have to screen it. You don't have to have a certain, or you can expand the size of the particles that you can drop back on. So it does save money in a lot of instances on installation and not being able to use a native backfill and not have to truck in like a 57 stone or something like that for your embedment. So that is something that we're looking into here in the United States. If, to be honest, I think it's a solution looking for a problem, because in a lot of instances we see people putting native backfill back on top of the pipe anyways.
Right.
And it's done here. So I don't know that it's really a problem, but it is something that's becoming more interesting. So that's something that the North American resin manufacturers are looking at as kind of the next step.
Well, we're already making, Doug, a very robust pipe.
Yes.
And if you look at backfill and point loads as an issue, which we really don't, because the industry is so used to using the proper backfill
Yes.
and getting compaction, because our pipe and PVC and ductile, we're all considered flexible pipe, and we all follow the same rules.
Yeah.
So we'd have to train the market that you don't have to follow the rules for our pipe. Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to think about it, but that's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, Doug Keller, LyondellBasell, thank you so much for joining me on the Poly Podcast. And once again, thank you to WL Plastics for sponsoring the Poly Podcast.
Thank you, Peter.